All right, I guess we'll go ahead and get started here. So my name's Syed Abraham Hashimi, PM working on ASP.NET Features and Visual Studio. And today we'll be learning about how to create mockups with Balsamiq. And we're going to go over both low fidelity mockups and high fidelity mockups. And if you have any questions as we go, either you can raise your hand or just speak up or maybe leave a question in the chat as well. All right, before we do that, let's talk about, what is the kind of purpose of these mockups, right? So when you create mockups, you're trying to convey some ideas to others, right? You've got some ideas in your mind, and you want to be able to make a mockup to share your ideas with other people, to get their feedback and to improve your mockups, right? And so you want to create your mockups in a way that they can kind of tell a story here, basically. So let me go through, before we get started creating our own mockups, let me go through a mockup that I've recently created, and we'll see how this is kind of telling a story to the viewers and showing the end user experience here, right? Because as we're developing features, we always have to keep in mind that the end user has to be able to use these and understand what's happening, right? All right, so here we see Visual Studio. That's the product that I work on, and we're working on some port tunneling features and was working on some mockups here. So in Visual Studio, we've got the debug dropdown that the user can interact with. So I've got that, and if I go to the next one, I can see now that menu has been expanded, and there's a new option here that says tunnel, which is currently disabled. So the user will go into that flyout. And then when the context menu is expanded, we can see the three different options here: enabled, always remember, and then disabled. And then if there's any notes to give the viewer more context to, what do these things mean, I normally put those in a comment towards the bottom here. All right, so that user picked enabled. Now they're ready to go ahead and run their application, and we'll see how this is different from when you normally launch a web app in Visual Studio. So here we can see that we've got a new tool window that pops up, and we've got our tunnel connections, and we can see the local URL and the tunnel URLs that are connected here. We can also see a log of the requests and the responses that are with those requests as well down here. And in this case, the user is interested in trying to test their web app on an external device, so they're going to use this QR code. So the user will bring their mouse to the QR code and click on that. And now they get the QR code on their screen. So at that point, they'll take out their phone or tablet, scan the QR code, and then go ahead and test out their web application on their remote device. All right, so this kind of told a story of what the end user is going to be doing here. And this is what I consider a high fidelity mockup. So we will get to the high fidelity mockups later on, but let's go ahead and start with some low fidelity mockups over here. And yeah, I have recorded. I'm recording, and we'll send that out at the end as well. All right, so we've gone through the purpose of the mockups, and we saw kind of a high fidelity mockup there. And let me go ahead and I'll start teaching you about Balsamiq here. So when you first run Balsamiq, it should look pretty similar to this. And you can get Balsamiq at balsamiq.com here. So it's got a little bit funny spelling, B-A-L-S-A-M-I-Q, balsamiq.com. And they have two products. One is the cloud version, and the other is the desktop version. So I always use the desktop version. I've never tried the cloud one, but I assume it's got similar capabilities and features there. All right, so let's go ahead and take a quick little tour of how Balsamiq is laid out here, and what are the things that we're going to be interacting with here as we develop our mockups. All right, so in Balsamiq, you have what's called a project. So a project can consist of one or more wireframes, and you can think about wireframes as pages or views, and you can have several of those inside of a project. And when you save the Balsamiq file, and Balsamiq will actually auto-save it. So after you save your file to a location, as you make changes, those changes will automatically be saved. And with Balsamiq, they save into a file that's called BMPR, and it's fully self-contained. If you had any images, any images or any assets that you brought into this project will stay with that BMPR file. So if you're working with anybody on a mockup, you know, you can share the BMPR file and all the various different assets will go along with it. All right, so here's the wireframes, right? I said you can have one or more kind of pages or wireframes associated with a project, and you saw in that kind of in the mockups that I previously shared, I was going from one page to another. Each page was a wireframe there. All right, so we've got that, and then we have what's called the UI library. So here are a lot of built-in, you know, they're called symbols, I believe, in Balsamiq, but you can think about these as controls or widgets or components, whatever word that you like using there, but these are just kind of self-contained items. So combo box, date picker, window, web browser, phone, those types of things. And there's also categories here too, if you're interested in kind of navigating it like that. The way that this works is you can just drag and drop onto your surface and then kind of party on these things as you go. All right, so on the right-hand side, we have some other information as well. So here we have what's called the inspector. So if I was to go into this combo box, I can customize certain properties of this. Let me go and we'll add some items in here. We'll do 1, 2, 3. All right, so now I have a combo box with 3 items. In the inspector, I can set certain properties on that. So for example, if I wanted this to be closed, I can set it to closed. If I wanted it to be disabled and closed, I can set it to disabled and closed. Those types of things you'll do in the inspector over here. All right, so that is the I button over here. So you can show it or hide it, and same for the kind of wireframes there, show or hide. And then there's also what's called project information. And project information is something that you normally would set one time, and then after you create new Balsamiq projects, these same settings will be applied. So you have 2 choices, one is sketch or one is wireframe. I always set mine to wireframe because I'm normally working on higher fidelity mockups. If I set this to sketch, you can see how the lines get a lot bigger, and it looks like it was written with a marker instead of drawn by a computer, essentially. That's the idea behind sketch and wireframe there. All right, cool. So I will just go ahead and hide those. And I'm also going to go ahead and hide this UI library here. So I showed you before that you can kind of drag and drop here. But what we'll do is, another way that you can do it is you can hide this, and we see quick add here. So with quick add, you can add things here. So I can just start typing. So if I know the name of the component that I'm looking for, I can use quick add for that. And if I were to click that, we get it here. Another way to get into it is actually just typing the slash key. So I'm going to type slash, and keep your eye over here. And I want to add a window. So that's how I can do it. All right, so now I'm going to show you guys a dialog in Visual Studio that I want to recreate as a low fidelity mockup. And this was actually something that I did recently. All right, so let me open up a solution here, and I'm gonna show you a particular dialog that's built into Visual Studio. And what I want to do is actually take that dialog and create a low fidelity mockup that's with modifications there, basically. So let me set this as the startup project. And then if I were to run this, or if I were to try to run the, oh, maybe that's not actually, oh, that's the wrong one. Sorry about that, 1 second. So I'm going to set a class library as the startup project. And if I try to run it, I get this particular dialog here. Let me take a screenshot of that. So we want to go ahead and recreate this dialog. So let's see how that works. I just took a screenshot just for reference. I'm just going to paste it in with Control V. This is the dialog that we want to recreate. We'll start over from scratch. Let's go ahead and get rid of that. All right, so I'm going to do /win for window, hit the enter key. Now we've got it here. All right, now let's go ahead and start setting some stuff. All right, so if I were to double click, it lets me modify the window title here. Great. All right, now I need this little icon here. So Balsamiq has a bunch of icons built in. This one's called Circle X. So I'll just look for circle, and then there it is, or times circle, whatever. All All right, so I'm going to bring that guy over, go back to the inspector. We're going to go ahead and set the color for this item to red, so that looks about the right size. In Visual Studio, as well as other products, where when there's a dialog, typically you can do a Control-C to copy the text. So I'll go ahead and do that. I'm going to create a text item here. So that's if you need a multi-line. If you wanted text on a single line, that's called a label. So I'm going to go ahead and Control-V that. And one thing that I didn't talk about here, inside the text, they have special syntax. Let me zoom in on this so you can see it a little bit better. So we can see that we can style our text here for bold or for different colors or for links, so on and so forth. And if you double click on that text, it'll show you what's the kind of markup that's needed there. So it's like it's not Markdown, and it's like their own kind of custom thing there. So if you're interested in that, that's pretty handy when when needed there. All right, so I pasted my text there. I'm just going to clean up what came over in the paste, and then we're going to bring this text and put it in the middle there. We're going to go ahead and expand that out a little bit. All right, so now I need an OK button, so I'm going to do /BUTT, hit the Enter key, double click to give the text for OK. You can also quickly kind of resize these just with these little handles here. So go down to OK. Now here, I want to add the little X, and then I want to get rid of that kind of footer there, right? So I'll get rid of the footer, or, you can play around with these things. If you need a large footer, or if you want to get rid of it, you could also get rid of, I guess you can't get rid of the top one. That would just be a rectangle at that point. And I want to add my little X there. Okay, great. So that is my mockup. But what I wanted to do was I wanted to modify this to be an info warning instead of the error, right? So we wanted to have a special kind of message there. All right, so this is one way of creating a kind of low fidelity mockup there. And in a lot of cases, low fidelity mockups are totally fine. And especially if you're a developer and you're just trying to, you've got some idea that you want to pitch to the team, creating low fidelity mockups is great. I create high fidelity mockups just because that's kind of how I've gotten used to doing things and going from there. But the low fidelity mockups are really great. So I would definitely recommend people trying out the low fidelity mockups to get started there. All right, let's run through creating something a little bit more kind of involved, I guess, here. So another area in Visual Studio that I work on is the experience for creating ASP.NET projects in the new project dialog. All right, so one thing that we have is this additional information. I'm going to take a screenshot of this as well, just for reference. Just as we go through to recreate this, I want to be able to see what I'm working on here. All right, so I need to get a new mockup. I can either click the plus button for a new wireframe, or I can do Control-Shift-N. And you can give these names as well. And I normally name these in order. That way, when I export them, the images are in order, and I can do things with those. But you can put whatever kind of name you like over here. All right, I'm going to paste in my original. And what we want to do is we want to go ahead and recreate this inside Balsamiq. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and get a window again. We got the window here. Now we're going to bring some additional items over here as well. So I'm going to go ahead and bring a label in. So I'm going to bring label here. All right, so information. I'll go into the inspector to kind of roughly set that to the right size. And one thing to kind of keep note is, if your items start appearing behind things, you might have to bring them to the front or bring them forward. So this is kind of, if you're a web developer, think about Z-index. And if you're used to working in Photoshop, this is the equivalent of layers, right? So I want to bring this to the front layer there. So let me right click and say bring to front. And then it should be on top now, I think. Let's take a look. Yeah, there we go. All right, so I wanted to get this about, roughly the same kind of size as what we're looking at on this screen here. So 24, yeah, that's close enough, I think. Then I'll set the color back to what it was before, to black. All right, another way, so I could, when I added this label, I did /label and then enter. Another way to create things is if you already have that item on the screen, you can Alt click it. So I'm holding down the Alt key. I'm going to click it and then just, I'll click it, hold Alt, and then drag. So now I've made a copy of it. All right. All right, ASP.NET Core Web App. I'll make this font a little bit smaller, I guess, probably 18. And we'll bring that guy over. Let's go ahead and make this a little bit wider. Now we want to recreate these buttons over here. So I'm doing /button. All right, so we'll do C#. Then I'm just going to Alt. I selected and then Alt, drag and drop. So I need 3, 6, 7 of these all together. Okay, let's just go ahead and start setting these up. Okay, Mac OS. Cloud. And then web. All right, I'm going to go ahead and select all these. Now we need to do some sort of alignment on these. Let me zoom in on that. So our alignment option. So what I'll do is I'm going to align these horizontally, and then I'm going to space them out. So we'll take a look at that. So let me go ahead and align these, align the middle. So now we've got the alignment, and then I'm going to space them out as well. So there we go. So spaced out horizontally. So let me bring this roughly here, and we can see the blue guideline that tells me that I'm in the center of the label ASP.NET Core Web App as well. So that's that kind of guideline there. Let's go ahead and recreate the additional items here. So I've got framework there. So I'm going to do a label for that one. I'll just create a new one so I get the default font size. Okay, so framework. Let's do a drop down. So / drop down. Okay, I'm going to make this a certain size. Let's see, it goes maybe to about here, I guess, somewhere around there. Okay, so .NET 6. So I double clicked it, and then you can start typing in. All right, so now let me actually, what I'll do is just bring that out of the window because it makes it a little bit more difficult working on it inside. So I'll bring it out. Now I know, so I've just got these two. I basically need to do the same thing again. So I will select both and then Alt drag and drop. Now we can change this. I'll say auth type. And then I'll go into the drop down. I just double clicked. I'll say none. And then we'll bring a checkbox. So /check. And we'll bring this guy over here and we'll say configure for HTTPS and just copy that. That was an Alt drag and drop. And we'll come back to get the state of everything correct as well. So now I need to do Docker OS and a checkbox. So I will grab these three. Alt drag and drop. OS, Linux. And then don't use top level statements. Okay. All right, I'm going to make this to be checked over here. So I'll say the state is selected. I will say these two are disabled. So disabled. So you can also select multiple things, and if they have certain properties that are shared, like disabled state, you can set those properties on all the things at the same time. But any property that is not shared among all the controls will not appear. So. All right, so those are now disabled. So these, what I want to do is go ahead and left align all these. So I select all of them and left align. And then additionally, what I'll do is I'll go ahead and probably group those. So I'll do a Control G to create a group. You can also select multiple items, and then in the right click, you can create a group. When you create a group, it just means you can move these around without them, move them around as a group as opposed to just moving them individually there. So we'll create a group out of that, and we'll also go ahead and create a group out of the Docker one. And then what I'll do is I'll go ahead and space these out vertically. And I created those groups because I don't want, I want the spacing with respect to the group and whatnot. So let's go ahead and space that out. Let's go ahead and add these info icons over here. So I'm going to do /info. So like I said before, Balsamiq has lots of kind of icons and assets that you might want to use. Let's go ahead and set the color to something similar to what we have in Visual Studio. We can also set the size here, so probably extra small for that one. All right, so let me just bring that in, and I'm just going to alt drag and drop that to the other locations that I need. Okay. Enable Docker, Docker OS, and then top level statements. And then let's drop that in, and let's get rid of the window here, the footer of the window, I mean. Let's make a little additional space here. I'm going to add a new kind of item over here, right? So we said that, you know, this was just the mock-up of what we already have. But let's say if I was trying to change this, you know, something that, you know, could potentially be interesting is, you know, if you had a CSS option, right? Do you want to use vanilla CSS or some flavor of Sass? So, you know, let's imagine that we're going to go ahead and create that as an option. So now here I have a group, and I've selected that group. To modify and interact with items that are inside the group, you have to double click. So I'll go ahead and double click, and now we can see I'm inside this group. So now I can go ahead and edit these things. So I'll do CSS, and then for here I can put CSS as an option, or I can put Sass or SCSS as well, and then go from there. All right. So now we can see that shows up by default as expanded in those combo boxes. So let me go ahead and make that to closed. All right, perfect. Now we have a additional information screen that we can use, and we can kind of party on that. So another concept that I wanted to show everybody was creating things which are reusable, right? So a lot of times with these mockups, like the mockups that I was showing you before, you know, a lot of times you have the same kind of base item here that's repeated on several different wireframes, right? Like this context menu is repeated on a few different wireframes. And there's not a whole lot of repetition in this particular one that I'm showing you, but there could potentially be, you know, the same particular component can be shown on 20 or 30 different wireframes. Let me just, you know what I'll do is I'll get rid of this, and we'll just call this additional information here. That. And then I actually screwed up because I wasn't actually done with my mockup because I forgot to do the buttons. So let's grab a couple buttons here. So we need a back, and these buttons should be the same size. So Balsamiq will default to auto size, so I will just modify the size so that it's no longer auto sizing, and these buttons will be the same size. Create back, drop that here, and then that's the end of our kind of mockup there. So what I'll do is now I want to go ahead and create like a reusable component here for this. So let me bring this in a little bit, kind of tidy this up. So in Balsamiq, these are called symbols. So first what you need to do is select all the items that you want to create a symbol for, and do Control G to create a group for that. And now to create a reusable symbol, what we do is we give it a name. So over here in the name column, I'm going to give it a name. So I'll say NPD additional info. And then I'm going to go ahead and either hit the enter key or click convert to symbol. All right, so I just did convert to symbol there. So now what I'll do is, so we've got our mockup there, our wireframe. Let's go ahead and do Control Shift N to create a new wireframe. I'm going to do /NPD. Now we can see that my symbol is appearing here. So now I see it on this page. Let me go ahead and duplicate that. So I want to show you how this works. All right, so now one thing that I forgot to do was to actually set the different values that are inside of these drop downs. So I only set the value that I'm seeing. So let me select this group. And over here you can see I have a couple options. I can either break the symbol apart, and if I do that, then it will no longer be a symbol. It will just be the wireframe on this page and totally disconnected from the symbol. Or I can edit the source. So I will go through and edit the source here. So now this is the symbol, and to get to this page you can always do View Symbols, and to get back to where you were before you can go to View Wireframes. And assets are, you know, things like images that you're going to drag in basically. All right, so now I'm editing the symbol here. So I want to add the .NET 5 option here to the framework. So I double click to go inside the group and then double click to go inside here. And then I'll say .NET 5.0 is the first option. And then I'm going to set this to be closed. I'm going to escape to get out of my group. And then I want to do the authentication type. I double click to get into the group, double click to edit this one. So the options here are none, individual accounts, Microsoft, identity, platform, or Windows. So those are the different options there. Okay, so now we can see it looks like I might have some kind of Z order problem over here. So let me make sure that I'm going to right click and say bring to front. And then let me escape. Okay, hold on a second. I need to bring the whole group to front. So bring to front. There we go. All right, I'm going to go back in and set this to be closed by default. And I'm not going to do the Linux one because I'm not planning on doing anything with that right now. So I'll go back to wireframes. All right, now let's say if you wanted to kind of show what it's like to configure these options, we can do that with these reusable symbols. So, you know, imagine I've got my new wireframe here. So I'm going to do /npd. And let's say this is what the additional information page looks like by default. Or actually, hold on, I screwed this up. Let me go back to edit source. So .NET 5, let me double click, and the one that I want selected by default is .NET 6 long-term support, because that's what's selected by default in Visual Studio there. All right, so now I'm back here. We can see that that change was made over here as well. All right, I will leave that as it is. I'm going to Alt drag and drop to make a copy of it, and this is still a symbol here. And now you can start modifying this kind of one-off. So if I double click and let's say I want to show the user switching to .NET 5, how can I do that? So I can double click. For here, I can then double click into the group and then set this to normal so that we can see what it looks like. Just one second. I need to bring that one to front as well. So let's go ahead and bring to front. Back to wireframes. All right, there we go. But why am I not seeing my .NET 5 option for some reason? Let me go back into it. .NET 5. Let me add another one. .NET 3.1. Let's go into it. Okay, great. All right, let's go back to wireframes here. This is weird. Okay. And I'm not sure what happened there. Let me go back into it. So selection. So it's got all of them, but you do normal. Okay, something weird going on with this particular mockup, but you get the idea. But what I want to do is go ahead and switch it over to .NET 5. So I'll Alt drag and drop this one as well. And then we'll show the user is going to go over into this group and pick .NET 6 or 5, I mean, and then we'll show it as closed. There we go. Let me bring this over to this other side. Let me get out of here. Let me do another Alt drag and drop so I can show another state of the authentication drop down. So I'll go into the authentication drop down. We'll just change it to Microsoft Identity Platform as the selection. All right. So now let's, imagine that these mockups were on different kind of pages here. So and we need to make some change. So let's say we want to change the default from CSS to SCSS. What does that look like? So go ahead and click on the symbol, go to edit source, and then go into the drop down. And then if I change it to, let's say, SCSS, escape, back to wireframes. And then now we can see that all these have changed as well, right? So this is potentially a pretty huge kind of time saver, because sometimes you could have 30 or 40 individual kind of wireframe pages here, and then if things are repeated over and over and over again, this could become a real big problem. So using the symbols is always a great kind of thing to take a look at there. All right, so any questions about the kind of low fidelity mockups or anything that we've kind of gone over here thus far? And let me Let me go and keep track of the chat as well. Yeah, so Chet was saying building up a library of control mockups seems really easy to do here. That's a nice investment if you do a lot of wireframing. And you would think that that's actually a great idea, right? You would think, hey, I could create a whole library of Visual Studio UI and Balsamiq, and I can reuse all those components, right? And guess what? I tried that 6 years ago. You know what's the problem with that? The UX in Visual Studio is constantly changing. You're never going to be able to keep up with it. So it's just not worth the time investment. It's easier to actually move on to do high fidelity mockups and do everything with screenshots. And that's what I do. And then I don't have to worry about keeping a library of low fidelity Visual Studio there. Okay. So let's take another look. Any questions thus far? And, especially for the interns too, right? I'm really doing this for the interns. So, I want to hear from the interns, and we're purchasing you guys licenses of Balsamiq as well. So definitely want to make sure that you guys are understanding everything that I'm going over here. Okay, great. All right, awesome. All right, let's go ahead and move into some kind of high fidelity mockups, because there's a lot of material online about Balsamiq, and virtually all of it is low fidelity mockups, right? So let me show you the different kind of workflow that I have when developing the higher fidelity mockups. And let me also quickly show you, how do I organize my mockups, right? So if you're creating lots of mockups, they can get lost very fast. So let me zoom in so that way I can show you how I do it. So the way that I do it is I just do everything by date. So it's, whatever the date is, 2022, whatever, and then description. So that's the name of the folder. And then if I were to go into it, I name the BMPR file the same exact thing as well. And typically the BMPR file is the only thing that I'll have in the root. And then what I'll have is I have an assets folder, and those will contain any sort of images or anything that I've been working on that's related to that mockup will be inside the assets folder. This is technically not required because all your images will be stored in Balsamiq in the BMPR file. But I just keep these because it makes it easier for me to kind of do my workflow of modifying those files. And I'm not sure if when you bring an image into Balsamiq, does it compress it or whatever. So I just keep the full fidelity version over here in the assets folder. So yeah, you don't have to follow the same exact kind of pattern for kind of, organizing your mockups, but I do recommend you have some sort of pattern, because in the beginning I was just creating folders and it became almost impossible to find things. All right, so that's why I always do things by date, and I even create like year folders and whatnot nowadays. All right, so now let's go into, let's say we want to create a high fidelity mockup of maybe what we just did here, right? Like, how could I do that? So I want to add a CSS option over here. How can I do it? So I use a screen clipping tool called Snagit. So when I do print screen, it will give me the opportunity to take a screenshot of individual windows. But when I'm sharing on Teams, it doesn't click to that specific kind of window there, basically. So it's a little more difficult. But anyways, let me go ahead and grab so I've got the file here in Snagit, and normally I will save this. So let me go through and let's save this new project somewhere. So let me go back up. So we'll say 202206. No, copy that. We'll go into it. We'll save that as that. I'm going to create an assets folder while I'm over here. Go ahead and save that. Yeah, okay, that's fine. All right, so now I saved it. Okay, so now what I'll do is I want to save that picture that I have in the assets folder there. You could just copy and paste this into Balsamiq if you wanted to, and that's probably a more efficient workflow, but I guess I just kind of got used to this. So I'll say 01 NPD additional info. So let's bring that down. Okay, so I'm going to drag and drop from my assets folder. Actually, let me create a new mockup, a new wireframe. I'm going to drag and drop this over here. All right, so now I've got my additional information screen. So what I want to do is I want to create that CSS option over here. All right, so we can just type that in, CSS. So I'll do label here. So I'll bring a label. I'll set the text color to white so we can see it. I'm going to add CSS. So at this point, you know, I don't want to use the dropdown that's built into. I don't want to use the dropdown that's built into Balsamiq because I'm trying to create a kind of a higher fidelity mockup over here. So what I'll do is I'll go back to Visual Studio and I'm just going to grab this dropdown here. So I'm going to screenshot that one as well. This real quick. Okay. And normally I would save this to the file, but I'll just copy and paste it just to save time over here. All right, so where are we at? We're here. Okay, there we go. Looks pretty lined up, and I think Balsamiq somehow tries to line up within images too, but I'm really not sure. Okay, now I've got this none option here, so we got to get rid of that none option. So what we need to do is we're going to create a rectangle. So I'll say rect. So here's my rectangle. I'm going to say no border on there. So normally these rectangles will have a 1 pixel border. Now I want to get this color. I want to get the color that's here. So I'm going to use, I've got the Windows Power Toys installed. So I'll shift Windows C. And this will give you a little kind of color picker here. So I'm going to put my cursor there. And that looked like a different color than what I was seeing before. Let me try it one more time. Hold on, let me escape out of everything. Just try it one more time. Yeah, okay, 38. Okay, that's fine. All right, so I'm going to set the color here to what that was. And I'm just going to click away because when something is selected in Balsamiq, it has a slightly different color. Okay, so that looks like the color is matching pretty good. So now I just want to hide none. So I'm going to bring it and I'm just going to hide it. I'll click away. Let me just zoom in. I'll control and then scroll my mouse, and I don't see any of the edges here. I could just make this a little bit smaller in the inspector. Instead of 23, I'll make it 20. And then I'll down arrow key and right arrow key just to make sure that it's not touching the border and nothing funny is going to be hidden here. Okay, so it looks great. So I will select it and then I'll select the window and I'll create a group out of it with Control G. Oh, let's undo that. So I want to bring this to front. So I'll say bring to front. And then I'll select that and then I'll control, oh, wow. All right, the Control G is not working over there for some reason. Not sure why, but it doesn't really matter that much. All right, so let's say we want to add our CSS option into it so we can bring it here. All right, so that pretty much looks like what we had. So now the next question is, hey, how do I show the expanded drop down here? So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and duplicate this. So on the wireframe, there's a little down arrow key on the bottom right, so you can rename or duplicate or remove. Let's go ahead and duplicate that. All right, I'm going to just go back to Visual Studio here. I'm going to find some sort of drop down that I can expand, and then I'll screenshot that. So let's grab it. So let me just bring this guy in just 1 second. Okay. All right, so now I'm going to go ahead and paste that over here as well. All right, so that's my original. This is my next one where I'll show that it's expanded. Let me bring a mouse over here. So I'll bring my mouse, and normally I'll change this to some kind of color green. And I do happen to use a green colored mouse too in real life, but green is great because it works in both white and black dialogues there. All right, I will get rid of this. Just move it out the way for now and paste in my new one. And then I'm going to go and see, can I grab that rectangle? Yeah, okay, so let's get rid of, okay, great. Okay, now, so this is the rectangle that matches, oh, actually all the colors are different now. So I need to shift Windows C for the color picker to get this color here. So that's the 1F. So I'm going to make this 1F color. Yeah, I'm going to bring it to hide none over here. I'm going to bring it to front so it's all the way on top of everything else. And then I can down arrow. I can use the arrow keys for fine tuning the placement there. So I did that. Okay, now I'm going to just copy that rectangle with Alt drag and drop. And now I need to get this color here. So that was 2E, so let's copy that. Let's paste it. All right, let's hide the non-option. Wait, did I get a good color match? Yeah, okay. I'm going to change the height to about 18 because these look a little bit smaller in here. So let's go in here to hide that one. Maybe up arrow key that one time. Oh, yeah, this needs to be smaller. 15 maybe. There we go. And you can always control and then scroll the mouse. I will Alt drag and drop this to hide these additional options here. Okay, great. All right, I'm going to select all these guys and just put them into a group so that way they don't move too much. Bring a label, or I can even just Alt drag and drop this guy. And normally it is quicker to kind of Alt drag and drop as opposed to creating new ones. So that's kind of typically what I prefer to do. Yeah, that's right. And we need to add the SAS options over here. All right, cool. So let me just space that out a little bit. Okay. This is so there's a little bit of additional space over here, and for like normal mockups that you'll probably create, I would just kind of ignore these. Hey, there's a little bit of additional space here or whatever. If you really wanted to, you can take this into Photoshop and really fine tune it to get the exact right size that you want. And I've done things like that in the past as well. But, for the most part, these are just mockups, right? And mockups are not going to be a one-to-one with the final product. And you shouldn't try to get them to be a one-to-one on the final product. But so people will, just tell them to ignore those sorts of things. All right, so now I want to, what I'll do is I'll duplicate this one. So I'll duplicate this one and bring it down because I want to show the user going through here and changing it. So let me copy my mouse. I'll get rid of this. Paste the mouse, and let's say he's going to change it to SCSS. And then we'll go here and double click. So that's SCSS. And we'll get rid of this mouse, I guess. Don't need that one anymore. All right, so here's kind of our higher fidelity mockup of showing, how can we add a CSS option, and then now these three wireframes kind of tell a story of that end user experience, right? So the user comes in, they're creating a new web project, and we want to give the ability for them to change the CSS language there. So they click on the dropdown will expand. They'll go ahead and click on SCSS. And then maybe the next thing is to then click create. And then you can have additional mockups to show that create experience and then kind of go from there. All right, let's see. What else do we have? All right. Any questions from anybody? Nobody's wondering anything particular about how to create? How do I do this particular thing in a mockup? Anybody? All right. Let's keep going.
Hey, Say, quick question.
Yeah, go for it.
Can you do interactivity in these mockups, like where you can roll through it and be like, hey, I press this button, and then it actually pops up?
Mm-hmm. We've been working together so long, Jimmy, that we have the exact same line of thinking, because I was right about to go into the interactive mockups. How can we create some interactive mockups, right? So now, which one do I want to do for the interactive? Hold on just a second. So we can even do it here. Why don't we show it here? Let's show it here. Let me open one that I've done before to show you the interactive mockups, and then we can do it here. So let's go to, I'm trying to figure out which one of these that I had, and I just had it open over here. Oh yeah, just one second. So where's my mockup? There it is. Yeah, it's here. Okay. This is the one. All right, let me double click on this PDF file. So in Balsamiq, you can export either to images or to a PDF file. Oh, that's not the right one. Let me go to an older one that I have. Where's this one? Yeah, here it is. Okay. All right, let's go back to the beginning. All right, let me just close the door real quick. So this was some ideas that I came up with for, how can we make Visual Studio easier to get started for new users, right? And that's kind of an area of feedback that we receive. So here we see the get to code dialog here. So this is what a user will see when they first start up, and I've added an additional kind of button here, get started with Visual Studio. And now we can see that, instead of the regular pointer, I've got the hand cursor here. So I'll go ahead and click that. Now we can see, hey, I've got, in addition to Solution Explorer, I've got like a Learn tab over here. And then I can start going into it. And this is a mix between a high-fidelity mockup and a low-fidelity mockup. So yeah, let's take a look at the Visual Studio tour. So the user will click that, and we can see this has expanded and some text here, and I can see there's 1 through 10, so I can start navigating these steps. All right, so it says open the file menu so you can browse. So this is a proposal for, hey, a guided tour, right? And these things would start appearing in Visual Studio, right? This is not just a mockup kind of artifact, right? So then they click file, basically walking the user through doing something, right? Opening a solution. So we go to open, and then we go to project solution. And the idea was that when you install Visual Studio, there will be kind of a Razor sample in the source repos folder. You're going to click on that folder, double click on the solution. And then from here, now we can see, we're on the view menu here, and there's a mockup bug because that one should be highlighted, but it's not. And then I'll go ahead and click on Solution Explorer to view Solution Explorer. And then now it's kind of saying, hey, your content is in the pages folder. Go ahead and expand it to see what's in there. And it's saying, go ahead and double click index.cshtml. So I can click on that. I can see, hey, this is where the code changes will happen. And then I think I forgot to re-export this one, but there should have been like click to learn more, or that this click on learn to continue should have appeared over here, and then they would kind of continue, right? So that's how we can do interactive mockups. One way that you can do it is with that PDF file. I also have a website that's mockupweb.azurewebsites.net, and it might not even be on right now because I'm the only one that uses it. But let me go and let me see if that's not on. I'll turn it on, and then we'll go from there. Oh, it's already on. Okay, great. So what did I have? It was like an NPD kind of thing. What was a tree? Was that a tree? What is that? What was a tree? Yeah, here it is. So here's an interactive mockup, right? So now if I was to, this would be good if you're trying to do like a user study on something, right? Because you can tell them to open the browser and then and then do F11 to get into full screen, and then it looks like you're actually in the product. I'm not going to do F11 over here because I'm not sure how Teams is going to respond, but so in this case, I was trying to come up with some ideas for simplifying the new project dialog with this tree view. So we can see that I've got various different pages here that show it. And from here, we can kind of get a sense for the experience of, what is it like as I'm trying to navigate this. And interactive mockups are pretty powerful, for this type of thing, where you either need to show, the interaction or you're trying to do a user study. Or you want to get a better feel for what it actually feels like, right? So that's where you might need an interactive mockup. All right, so why don't we go through and we will start taking a look at this particular mockup to see how can we create an interactive mockup. All right, so let's modify the mockup that we have to then go and create an interactive mockup. So I will get rid of these ones. These are pretty much garbage. So move to trash. And I'll rename this. I'll say 01 start, and this is with CSS expanded, so 02 CSS expanded, and then 03 SCSS selected. But name these however you want to name these, obviously, right? All right, so now I want to make this to be interactive, right? And if this was a normal, if you're doing low fidelity mockups, let me add a couple options. Individual. Let's say if you were doing the low fidelity mockups, this is already pretty much built in. So here, Where is it? Links. Yeah, right. Okay. All right. So if the user were to click on this, you can associate a link to it. So if they click on it, it will then go to that link. But I'll show you a different way to do it. Let me get rid of that one. All right, so what I want to do is if the user clicks in this drop-down area, I want to then transfer to CSS expanded wireframe. So I will create a rectangle. And then we want this rectangle to kind of cover what we have here. So I'm going to just cover it. And it doesn't have to be perfect, and make it with no border and full transparency. And like I said, it doesn't have to be in the perfect spot, but you want it to kind of cover the whole control there. And on the link is where that kind of magic happens. So I can do, I'll link it to 02 CSS EXP. So we'll link it there. And then when I go to this page, I'll create another rectangle that will cover this. And I want to just cover that one particular option there. So no border, full transparency, and it looks like it's in a good spot. So I'm going to link that to 03 SCSS. And then I'll Alt drag and drop that on top of the CSS option and just link that back to 01 start. All right, so let's try it. So I will export this to a PDF. Yeah, all wireframes. Yeah, okay, those are good. All right, so now let me go back to my folder, demo. What a name. Let's go and open that guy up. Let's take a look. All right, so I got my demo here. So now I can bring my cursor here, and now I'm on the CSS option here. I can expand it. I see the additional options that are here. I can pick SCSS. And then if I was on that same page, I could also pick CSS to go back to the beginning. So yeah, that's kind of how interaction works in Balsamiq, and you can do a lot of really kind of cool things over here. Like we saw in this demo that we did, it was a very kind of simple flow, right? Where we showed just one drop down and one option goes to one thing. But you could have several of these, right? Like for each one of these tree nodes, I have with the tree, actually on the tree, you can associate each particular item with a selection. So let me go ahead and show you that one. So this is 2205 NPD tree update. So let me go here and we'll go into the BMPR file to take a look at this. Okay, we got 3 minutes left. Okay, let's see, did that open up? Yeah, there it is. All right, so here in the tree view, actually, you know what I did? I did do individual overlays here as well. Yeah, that's right, okay. What I would recommend for you to do if you're trying to create some sort of interaction and you've got a higher fidelity mockup, and if you have something that's shared across a bunch of pages, I would make it on one page, and then you can select them by dragging, and then copy this and just paste it on every other page. But what you'll notice is that this mockup starts at the very top left corner. And I normally do that with most of my mockups, because then when you copy and paste something, like let's say for example, if I had a white label over here, if I was to copy and paste that from one page to another, it's going to show up in that same exact spot, right? So that's why I keep things oriented in the top left. And my website also has a limitation that it has to be oriented in the top left as well. Okay. Jimmy, was that satisfactory for your interactivity question?
Totally, you nailed it.
Okay, great. All right, so let's see if there's any other questions over here. We've only got 2 minutes left. I see there's some chat been happening over here with some GIFs and everything. Okay. Okay, great. Okay. All right, so that is really kind of getting started with mockups in Balsamiq, and Balsamiq is a really kind of easy tool to get started with and to learn, and I would suggest first start out with the lower kind of fidelity mockups, and then kind of work your way up to the higher fidelity mockups, and also try to do some of those things that I was showing you here, about creating the rectangles to hide things. Like let me show you one more time. Do I have enough time? Okay, yeah, let me take a screenshot of this, and One thing that I didn't show you was, how do I remove something from a page that's already there, right? Like that could be a tougher kind of problem, right? So let's go through and try and do that real quick. So I'll do Control-Shift-N, I'll paste that guy, and then that's where the rectangle comes back in, right? So I'll do /rectangle, and then I'll get the color again. So Windows, Control-C, but let me make sure that I'm not on there. And let's say we just want to hide the Docker option, how would we do that, right? And it's basically the same kind of concept as what we did before. And let's say I'll just go in here and hide it. And then you can move this, you can hide this one too and move it up if you wanted to. So those are kind of how do you hide stuff. And that's really about it for today. I think if anybody has any questions or comments or anything relating to Balsamiq or mockups in general, definitely feel free to reach out to me, and I'll be more than happy to assist. All right. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.